This video covers operation of Snorkel aerial platforms with maximum platform heights from 100 feet to 126 feet. The number part of the model designation indicates the ground to bottom of platform height. These versatile aerial platforms all feature the Snorkel envelope management system. Weight-saving aluminum booms, powerful engines, and high-torque drive motors combine to produce a high power-to-weight ratio for negotiating all types of job site conditions. This video focuses on operation. It is not designed to replace reading the operator's manual for your specific model. Prior to operating the machine, you should be thoroughly familiar with the operator's manual and receive proper hands-on instruction from a qualified trainer. You also need to know OSHA and local regulations concerning operation and the use of safety devices, such as restraints. And of course, you should always dress appropriately and wear proper safety protection gear when operating any equipment and on any job site. There are three major hazards when operating any aerial platform: electrocution, crushing, and tip over. Following the procedures in the operator's manual and this video will help you guard against them. Advanced knowledge of the specifics of the model you will be operating and its controls, gauges, and safety devices are important, as is knowledge of the safety decals and placards. These matters are covered in detail in the operator's manual, which also contains component identification and an operator's troubleshooting guide. The operator's manual shows all the safety-related placards and decals on the machine and where they are placed. When you see warnings like these, heed them precisely. Snorkel aerial platforms have two control panels: a lower panel located on the turntable and an upper control panel on the platform. Control panel appearance varies slightly from model to model. Consult your operator's manual for the details on the machine you're using. Thoroughly familiarize yourself with all controls and gauges before attempting to operate the machine. The battery disconnect switch is located above the wiring box. If this switch is turned off, there is no electrical power and the machine will not operate. The battery disconnect switch should never be turned off with the engine running, as damage could occur to the electrical system components. These machines have a high-range speed selector on top of the chassis that works with the drive range switch on top of the upper control panel to determine the maximum drive speed. All models covered in this video have extendable axles that must be deployed before the boom can be raised. The controls are at the rear of the chassis. Both control panels include the warning lights for the unique Snorkel envelope management system, a highly important safety feature that we will describe in detail later in this video. Snorkel aerial platforms can be started from either of the control panels. The start switch on the lower control panel requires a key. If your machine is diesel-powered or has the dual fuel feature, check your operator's manual for any special starting instructions. The lower control panel has all switches necessary for operating the turntable, boom, and platform from the ground. These include the boom elevation switch, boom extension switch, boom rotation switch, platform rotate switch, platform level switch, and, on jib-equipped models, the jib articulation control. The machine cannot be driven or steered from this control panel. The panel also has a red emergency stop button, a selector switch that determines which control panel is active, and a ground operation switch that must be held upward while operating the controls on the lower control panel. These machines have a boom speed knob and a switch that is used to select either axle or boom operation. The panel also includes engine temperature and ammeter gauges and reset buttons for the circuit breakers, as well as an emergency power switch. Controls for operating the machine from the platform are located on the upper control panel. Controls on this panel generally duplicate the ones on the lower control panel. However, the controls for moving and steering the machine and directing boom functions are joysticks rather than the toggle switches found on the lower control panel. One joystick raises and lowers the main boom, and rotates the turntable. Another controls drive functions, forward and reverse, driving and steering. The boom extend-retract control on these machines is also a joystick, as is the jib boom raise-lower control on the jib-equipped models. Separate controls determine engine speed. There is also a drive range switch and an emergency power switch. The upper control panel emergency lowering switches are located on both sides of the control box. We will describe their function later in the section on emergency operation. The platform foot switch must be held down while operating the platform boom or drive controls. Do not step on the foot switch while you are trying to start the engine. Snorkel aerial platforms have a number of alarms and safety devices that must be working when the machine is in use. Check each of them as part of your daily pre-start inspection. Snorkel's envelope management system applies the latest technology to reduce tip-over. On TB100J, TB120, and TB126J, EMS status and warning lights and the corresponding alarm sounds keep the operator aware of where the platform is operating within the envelope. There are identical EMS status and warning lights on the upper and lower control panels. A green status light indicates that the machine is on and ready for operation. If the green light is flashing, it indicates a calibration error, and the machine should not be operated until a qualified technician fixes the problem. The white EMS envelope light will begin flashing when the platform moves within approximately 3 feet or 1 meter of the envelope limit. When it comes on and stays on, it means the platform is at the limit of the working envelope. If the platform moves outside the limits of the working envelope, the red EMS warning light will begin flashing. Move the boom back into the working envelope. A solid red light means an EMS error has been detected. If this occurs, press the red warning light completely in and release it. If it goes out and the green light comes back on, solid, the unit is ready to resume normal operation. If the red light continues to be illuminated, the unit may be in a retract lower mode, where the only functions that will be allowed, depending on the position of the boom, are retract, then lower. If it stays on and none of the boom functions work, use the emergency lowering method to lower the platform. We will cover those procedures under emergency operation. The red emergency stop switches on the upper and lower control panels stop the entire machine immediately any time they are pressed. On both control panels, the emergency stop is a large red button. Once it is pressed, you will need to pull it back outward before you can restart the engine. In addition to the EMS alarm sounds, there are several other audible and visual alarm functions on these workstations. The light in the emergency stop switch indicates an engine shutoff condition, high temperature, low oil pressure, or that the alternator is not charging the battery. If this indicator light comes on, immediately lower the platform, shut off the engine, and correct the problem. Some models have an automatic shutoff feature. The level sensor alarm, warning that the chassis is out of level and a tipping hazard exists. When it sounds, you must immediately retract and lower the boom completely and drive the machine to a firm, level surface. All Snorkel aerial platform units in this series are equipped as standard with a self-closing gravity gate and a horn. With those basics behind us, let's move on to operating the aerial platform. Safe operation begins with a pre-start inspection of the machine and the working area. These are complex machines that require detailed daily inspection of all items on the operator's manual inspection list. As you start, turn the battery switch to the on position and pull the emergency stop button outward. Make sure that none of the circuit breakers are tripped. Put the selector switch on the lower panel in the lower controls position. You will need to check the fluid levels and check for leaks of fuel, engine oil, coolant, and hydraulic oil. Be sure to check all gauges and the batteries. If you are not sure how to do those things, complete instructions are included in the operator's manual. You also will need to check for any structural damage, loose bolts, or broken welds, and inspect all slide pads and surfaces they contact, the whiffles and associated washers at the ends of the base, intermediate and tip booms, and the wire ropes. The boom will have to be extended approximately 1 foot to make sure all the slide pads are in place. See your operator's manual for how to inspect these areas. Check the tires and wheels for signs of damage and make sure all of the safety features are in good condition. Start the engine from the lower control panel and let the engine warm up. On dual fuel models, if you start in the LP mode, the shutoff valve on the LP gas tank must be open. When the engine starts, the EMS system performs an automatic self-check. This process takes about 5 to 10 seconds, and the machine cannot be operated during this time. The lights flash and the alarm tones sound briefly. Check the panel lights. If the red light is on, press it. If it still stays on, the machine is not safe to operate until serviced by a qualified technician. Next, check those gauges and functions that require that the engine be running. Go to the rear of the machine and make sure the footing underneath it is firm enough to support the weight of the machine. With the axles retracted and the locking pin in place, operate the boom control. The boom should elevate only slightly above horizontal and only extend approximately 3 feet. Fully retract the boom and fully lower the boom. Make sure the control selector switch is in the lower controls position and put the boom axle switch in the axle position. Hold the jack lever in the raise position until the wheels are off the ground and the jack stops moving. Remove the pin and lock. Hold the axle lever in the extend position until the axles fully extend. The axles will extend one at a time. Replace the pin and lock. If the pin is difficult to replace, cycle the axle control lever back and forth while exerting force on the pin. Once the pin is in place, lower the machine back to the ground by holding the jack lever in the lower position. Return to the control panel and set the selector to boom. The boom should operate normally. At the lower control panel, with lower controls selected, press up on the ground operation switch and operate the ground controls at the same time, checking each function. We'll demonstrate these controls in the next section of this video. You can test the tilt alarm by raising the boom above horizontal and manually moving the level sensor to the side as far as you can. When testing the turntable rotation function, pushing the switch to turn it clockwise will turn it toward you. Make sure you have room to step out of the way. Test the emergency bleed-down switches and the emergency lowering knob on the bleed-down valve, located at the base end of the lift cylinder, to make sure they will allow the boom to lower and retract. Make sure the boom retracts when lowering, or a tip-over hazard will occur. Check the emergency stop switch. When you press it in, the engine will turn off and all functions will stop. Then, pull the switch outward. Now, test the emergency power system. Hold the emergency power switch downward and the ground operation switch in the on position. You should now be able to operate the aerial platform on emergency power. Once you have verified that the emergency power works, release the emergency power switch. Start the engine. Now, set the selector switch to upper controls and inspect and operate the controls on the upper control panel in the same way you tested the lower controls. Finally, make sure the operator's manual is stowed in the manual holder and that all decals and placards are clean and in good condition. The other phase of your safety inspection is inspecting the work area. You also need to be aware of whether there will be other persons in the area and whether there will be vehicles present. Some very important things you must check on are the presence of electrical hazards, tipping hazards, and hazardous conditions caused by materials such as flammable liquids and other combustibles. Be alert for anything overhead that the platform could run into or cause a head or crushing injury. Be aware of wind and weather conditions that could increase tipping hazards. Snorkel aerial platforms are not electrically insulated, are not designed to protect the operator from electrocution. Always observe safe approach distances for electrical conductors. If the boom or platform comes in contact with electrical wires, do not attempt to operate the lower controls until the power is turned off. Before using the work platform in any location that has been classified as hazardous, make certain that it is approved and of the type required by ANSI NFPA 505 for use in that type of location. Observe all other safety rules and best practices, such as never allowing riders and never operating a machine that is not operating properly. Remember that all platform occupants must wear a fall restraint device connected to a lanyard anchor point. With the pre-start inspection completed and the extendable axles deployed, let's look at how to operate the machine. All boom and platform motion functions can be activated from the lower control panel. Caution: soft soil or unstable conditions under the machine can add to tipping hazards. Make sure the machine is on a firm, level surface. Never exceed the rated platform capacity. If the engine is not already running, make sure the battery disconnect switch is on, no circuit breakers are tripped, and the emergency stop button is pulled outward. Then turn the start switch to on. If the switch is left in on for more than 30 seconds, you may have to turn it off again before you turn it to the start position. To operate the machine from the lower controls must be selected and you must hold the ground operation switch upward while activating the controls. Moving the boom elevation switch to up will cause the boom to elevate. Moving the switch to down lowers the boom. If movement is sluggish and the ambient temperature is below about 32 degrees Fahrenheit or 0 degrees Celsius, the hydraulic oil probably needs warming. Some machines have a hydraulic oil warm-up switch. Moving the boom rotation or platform swing switch to clockwise rotates the turntable clockwise when viewed from above. Remember, clockwise rotates toward you. Counterclockwise rotates the turntable counterclockwise as viewed from above. When the boom extension switch is moved to extend, the telescoping boom extends. Retract retracts the boom. On booms with jibs, moving the jib articulation switch upward moves the jib upward. Down moves the jib downward. Moving the platform rotate switch to clockwise rotates the platform clockwise as seen from above. The counterclockwise position moves it counterclockwise as seen from above. Moving the platform level switch to up tilts the platform floor upward or away from the ground. Down tilts the platform floor downward toward the ground. To operate the machine from the upper control panel, make sure the selector on the lower control panel is set to the upper controls position. Then enter the platform. Make sure the gravity gate is closed and fasten your safety restraint to the lanyard attachment point. Controls on the upper control panel duplicate those on the lower control panel. Also, on the upper control panel only, there are additional controls for driving and steering the machine. Check to make sure that the emergency stop switch is pulled outward and no circuit breakers are tripped. If the engine has been turned off, start it from the upper control panel using the same procedure used from the lower controls. Remember, the foot switch must be depressed for the movement controls to operate the machine. But never let up on the foot switch when the machine is in motion. This will cause a sudden stop and possibly an injury. It is best to drive between work areas with the boom lowered and in a position where it does not interfere with your field of vision. On jib models, elevate the jib enough to provide ground clearance and make sure it does not obstruct your field of view. An aerial platform will tip over if it becomes unstable. Death or serious injury can result from a tip-over accident. Do not drive an elevated platform on soft, uneven, or sloping surfaces. Do not drive the machine on grades that exceed the gradability as rated in the operator's manual. The blue and yellow arrows on the chassis indicate the direction the chassis will move when the drive or steer control is moved toward the corresponding color. When the machine is in the stowed position with the boom centered between the rear wheels, the direction of the steer control movement corresponds with the direction of chassis movement. When the turntable is rotated from the stowed position with the booms to either side of or in front of the chassis, the direction of control movement does not correspond to the direction of chassis movement. Also, the effects of sudden turns or stops on occupants are exaggerated and more turning space is required. Avoid driving in these configurations. The drive joystick controls forward and reverse motion and steers the machine. Pushing the joystick forward causes the machine to move forward. Pulling it toward you makes the machine move in reverse. The front wheels are the steer wheels. Moving the joystick to the right steers them to the right, and moving it left steers left. You cannot steer unless you are driving. The color-coded arrows on the control panel correspond to color-coded arrows on the chassis that also indicate which direction the chassis will move. You can move forward or in reverse and steer at the same time. You cannot steer unless the machine is driving. The drive speed is proportional to the joystick position. The farther the joystick is moved, the faster the travel speed, within limits determined by the speed range chosen. Maximum speed is about 3 miles per hour. To stop the machine, return the joystick to the center position. The wheels will stay where you set them if you don't return them back to a neutral position. You could execute a more sudden emergency stop by removing your foot from the foot switch. Most controls on the upper control panel work similarly to the lower panel controls we demonstrated. But on the upper control panel, raising and lowering the boom and turntable rotation are controlled by joysticks. The boom extend-retract function is also controlled by a joystick, and the action is proportional to joystick movement. When you push the joystick forward, the boom raises. When you pull the joystick back, the boom lowers. Moving the joystick left causes the turntable and boom to rotate clockwise. Moving it right rotates the turntable and boom counterclockwise. On jib models, the jib up and down functions are also controlled by a joystick. Always remain alert and look in the direction of movement. When the machine will be left in one position for an extended period, you can turn off the engine to conserve fuel, then restart it when you need to drive or execute boom movements again. Do not operate the aerial platform from trucks, trailers, railway cars, floating vessels, scaffolds, or similar equipment unless the application is approved in writing by Snorkel. Take care to prevent rope, electrical cords, and hoses, etc. from becoming caught in or on the aerial platform. If the platform or booms become caught on an adjacent structure or other obstacle and is prevented from normal motion, reverse the control to free the platform. If control reversal does not free the platform, evacuate the platform before attempting to free it. Do not use the aerial platform as a crane, hoist, jack, or for any purpose other than to position personnel, tools, and materials. The operator of a Snorkel aerial platform must know how to perform 3 emergency functions: emergency stop, emergency power, emergency bleed down. The 2 emergency stop switches provide a fast way to manually turn the main power off. Remember, they must be pulled out before the engine can be started again. The emergency power system provides a battery-powered backup hydraulic system to lower and stow the machine if the main power system fails. There are emergency power switches on both control panels. To operate either one, the start switch must be on, the selector switch must be set to the control panel you are using, and the emergency stop switch must be pulled outward. Then, you can operate the boom using the same switches you would use under full power. The movement will be slow and may have long lag times. The length of time the emergency pump can be operated depends on battery capacity. The emergency bleed down switches are located on either side of the wiring box and on both sides of the upper control panel. The key switch must be off and the emergency stop switch pulled outward for emergency lowering. At either the upper or lower controls, hold both the switches up and watch carefully to see that the booms retract as they lower. The machine will tip over if the booms lower without retracting. Stop the process immediately and report the problem for repair. It is also possible to perform a manual bleed down. Before you start the bleed down, turn the battery off. The emergency bleed down knob is located at the base end of the lift cylinder. The emergency bleed down knob is accessible from the underside of the turntable. Do not reach for the knob from above the turntable. You would be in a crushing hazard position. Caution: this is a non-powered lowering and retract only operation. Be careful not to lower the platform or booms onto electrical wires, people, or other obstructions. Turn the emergency lowering knob that opens the bleed down valve. You can control the rate of boom descent with the knob, and can stop the lowering by closing the valve again. However, you will not be able to raise the boom by this method, and you will not be able to raise it once power is restored until the valve is closed. When the boom has completely lowered, close the valve. The aerial platform may be towed at slow speeds using the optional tow kit. The tow vehicle must have sufficient capacity to safely tow and stop itself and the aerial platform on the steepest grade and type of surface that may be encountered. Refer to the weight of the aerial platform in the operator's manual. To prevent unauthorized use and damage, properly stow the aerial platform at the end of each workday. It must be properly stowed while transporting. If the engine is hot, set the throttle to low and let the engine idle for 5 minutes to cool down. Center and retract the booms and place them in one of these approved stowing and transport positions. Turn off the start switch. If there is a cover on the upper control panel, close it. At the lower control panel, press the emergency stop button in. Turn the start switch off and remove the key. Turn the battery disconnect switch off. Close and latch all doors, covers, and hatches. It is very important that the transporting vehicles and ramps are rated to support the machine's weight. Verify capacity before attempting to transport the machine. Drive the machine onto the transport vehicle if the approach ramp incline is within the grade capability of the machine. Remove all objects from the work platform and safely position the boom. Then, drive to the base of the ramp and get lined up perfectly with the ramp. Rotate the turntable so you can see the front wheels as you drive up the ramp. These extra long booms must be properly secured on the transport vehicle. Instructions vary from model to model. Read and follow the directions on the operator's manual for your aerial workstation. Each machine has specific support and securement points. The following procedures may be required to secure the TB126J for transport. Once the machine is on the transport vehicle and the wheels are chocked, use the platform controls to rotate the platform completely to the side. Release both center hook latches. Push in and hold the slide interlock button, and at the same time, push and hold the slide actuator switch toward the chassis. Continue to hold both switches until the platform moves as far back toward the chassis as it will go. When securing the machine on the vehicle, raise the main boom about 1 foot. Place wooden blocks under the platform. Then, use the platform controls to lower the platform onto the blocks. Use zip ties to fasten the platform gate to the guardrails and to fasten the foot switch to the platform floor. Use a nylon strap to securely fasten the platform against the wood block. Otherwise, the directions are the same as for stowing. Turn the anti-restart master switch to off at the upper controls. Turn the master key switch to off and remove the key. Set the battery disconnect switch to off and lock it in that position. Attach 2 nylon straps from the underside of the base boom to the trailer, and fasten a nylon strap from the underside of the base boom to the bar across the lower end of the jib boom. Winching, like towing, requires that the wheel hub disconnect plates be removed and turned over. On most machines, this involves removing 2 bolts, turning the plate over, and reinstalling the bolts. But remember, this process disables the brakes, and at this point, the machine is free to roll. It is also possible to hoist the machine with a lifting device of sufficient capacity. The chains or straps are attached to the lifting lugs. See your operator's manual for details. Never run the sling cable itself through the lifting lugs, and make sure spreader bars are used to keep the chains, straps, or cables from contacting the turntable or booms. This concludes the video training module on safe operation of Snorkel telescoping boom aerial platforms. Before operating any aerial platform, new operators should thoroughly read the operator's manual, paying close attention to the danger, warning, and caution warnings throughout, and to details of procedures you may not yet fully understand. All new operators should also have hands-on training supervised by a qualified trainer. You'll find your Snorkel aerial platform to be versatile and easy to use, and a wonderful tool to help you get the job done efficiently and safely.